I like that rock song from Moana. You're welcome.
That was controversial, offensive.
I think if we're getting kicked off, it might be for the Steve Harvey impression.
Really? I know Tony Fauci. Michael Jackson and Elmo, that's something to think about.
Only unbuckle up.
In 5, 4, 3, 2. Welcome. That's going on. Welcome back to
Buckle up, baby. Coughing for 14 episodes in a row.
13.
13, that's right.
We're really on our game. Starting
right.
off the New Year's strong. Episode 13. Oh, okay. So the New Year's energy is still kind of there. It's going to wither by mid or... I feel like all of January you can use it.
Yeah, in Hollywood,
Yeah.
people just stop working the entire month of December
Yeah.
into way into January.
Wait, into January? Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, still going?
No one answered my emails.
I feel like there's that one email you get to, it's probably February, and you're like, I can't say Happy New Year anymore at the end of it.
Yeah.
Or like, it's just something to kind of bring it in. It's a
Yeah.
nice way to like touch base with people you haven't touched base with in a little bit.
Yeah.
Anyone you want to connect with, it's just a great way in. Just hope to work together more in 2022. It was a great year, whatever it is. Hope to this again, and yeah.
It'd be funny if you said Happy Holidays.
Like in March?
Early February.
That would be a funny way to just throw people, because that would
Yeah.
definitely be memorable if in March, on March 14th, you went Happy Holidays and Merry Christmas for next year. I got a shout out. I connected with Frank Caliendo on my Instagram.
Really?
Yeah.
For the first time?
No, we've been in touch here and there, just comments on things. He's always been gracious and kind. Shout out to Frank Caliendo, one of the greatest of our childhood. You are now watching
Mad TV.
MTV. Michael's glitching out like crazy. Mad TV, great impressionist, great impersonator.
Yeah.
And I forgot what prompted it, but I appreciate it. I just thanked him for the shout outs throughout the year. He mentioned me in a few videos and
Were you on like TikTok or
TikTok.
He's
He's very active on TikTok and participates a lot, so it's a lot of fun.
Huh.
And,
What do you think he does now? Full time? Because has he been in a movie or anything in a long time?
Frank? I'm not exactly sure media wise what he's been up to.
Yeah.
He's, with certain people, they're sometimes behind the scenes, or they're producing, or they're making other stuff. He's active on social media, and I'm sure he does a lot of live events, corporates, things like that. I'm not exactly sure, but a lot of guys who are just skilled like that work those circuits of privates and events and things, because he's super entertaining and does a lot of iconic figures. So I'm not exactly sure, but there's a lot of the working entertainer world that does corporates and privates and dinners and do well.
Wouldn't it be sad if he was texting you and being like, man, people just don't want Bush impersonations anymore. It's tough out there for a Bush impersonator.
Yes, but he's an impersonator. But I hear you. There are guys who do one.
Yeah.
There's a difference between someone who does impressions versus an impersonator who dresses up like one person.
Right, impressions.
And goes out there.
Is that like a taboo in the impressions game to call someone an impersonator?
Not really. Those names get used interchangeably, but there is a difference between sometimes part of the fun of doing an impression or an impersonation, in that sense it's synonymous, is creating that person with I said again. Creating that person with your face. So people can see the person and you transform. So I wouldn't say it's frowned upon, because who cares? People can do whatever they want. But when you doll yourself up and really transform yourself, it's almost a different act, because then you are that person and you're not seeing the person transform into that person. You're just seeing that person. So it's freaky. It's like when you see those Michael Jackson guys in Times Square. Whoa, is that Michael Jackson? You know it's not. But if somebody was like impersonating Michael Jackson with all the body movements, but still maintaining themselves, that has a different quality.
Would you, in the impersonator community, would someone who dresses up like Elmo or Spider-Man be considered an impersonator?
Why wouldn't they be, I guess, is the question.
Because they're just wearing the costume.
Oh. Yeah, no, you have to do the voices and stuff. Thing. I mean, the Spider-Man Comic-Con kind of thing where they like put the costumes on and go to events and stuff. That's not
just someone that.
That's not like I do a great Spider-Man impersonation by buying an outfit, but Elmo song. If you do that, then it's valid.
That would count. Okay.
This is the song. La la. You were telling me Elmo has infected your
Yeah, it's one
parenting
of
life.
my daughter has like a handful of words. One of them is Elmo.
Mm-hmm. I gotta say, it happens to everyone.
Yeah,
It's one of their first words. Emma, Emma, Emma.
it's.
There's a captivating spell that little red beast puts on our children.
You think they knew what they were doing when they created him? They were like, we need a character that speaks to this characteristic and this experience of childhood.
My guess is no. They just had a bunch of things.
Yeah.
Think about all the other characters that they don't say. Big Bird, Snuffleupagus, Snuffleupagus. There's 1,000 people in that world. Elmo is Sesame Street, right?
Elmo Sesame Street, yeah.
So there's a bunch of characters. Elmo happens to stick. And you could guess I think like anything that strikes with a massive audience, all the questions of how it happened come after the fact. It's easy to look hindsight at, Frozen. The reason Frozen was such a smash hit was it had, a princess that did powers as opposed to in other movies where it was more, and the types of powers she had were more magical and, feminine, empowering or something. But they didn't say we need this for that.
But
they were kind of probably just playing around creatively. So Elmo, they did a funny, cute voice. And kids really responded to it.
I think Disney does do that, though. They'll go, we need a Hispanic princess who's this age because that's the audience we're going for.
They definitely do that more now as opposed to telling good stories. So, that's my critique of them. They try to just appeal to the cultural and political whims of the time, and it makes for really bad stories that don't make much sense and aren't compelling because they're trying to, be woke or signal virtue, and it really irritates me. That's different than creating a character that makes sense and then it resonates to millions and millions of people for a specific reason. But you find out those things afterwards. They're revealed to you. Why did that one work?
I guess it's kind of funny. The most successful princess of the last 20 years was the whitest princess they've ever done. Like a Norwegian, white-haired Frozen.
That she's the most successful? Yeah, Frozen's huge. Frozen's bigger than all of them.
Yeah, I'm definitely not there yet. But
I'm just gonna sit with what you just said for a minute. Whew, Mike, we are trying to get us canceled at 130 followers.
No, I'm saying it's not. I'm saying it's not good. I think it's awful. Did you see Encanto?
I did. I know I didn't really. I just saw.
It's good.
You can talk about Bruno. No. I just kept hearing that. You know when you're not watching a movie that your kids are watching and it makes no sense to you?
Yeah.
Because you're in and out chiming in.
Yeah.
Before you see a Disney movie for the first time all the way through and you're hearing it in spurts, it's the weirdest experience. Like you're having a nightmare or a wacky trip. They don't talk about Bruno, no. And then I walk by later. And there's this huge woman character. And then there's these.
Yeah.
And then I try to ask the kids what's going on to piece it together. They all have powers except for her. Oh, okay. They don't talk about Bruno, no. I don't know what's going on.
You should see it. It's good.
Was it?
Yeah, it was really good. I really liked it.
Yeah, Lin-Manuel's on fire.
Yeah, he's writing all their songs now, right?
I think he wrote that. He wrote Moana. That was all Lin-Manuel.
No, that's interesting because I think the woman who wrote, it was the guy who wrote Moana wrote Encanto. So maybe they like working together.
The guy who, the writer?
Yeah, it's I thought it was like a Hawaiian fella. It's like a white dude who wrote Moana and he wrote Encanto.
Polynesian, you thought he was of that. Well, he consulted. A lot of the music they used were these Polynesian artists.
No, I'm sure there was
in Moana, which was very cool. And Lin-Manuel did all the music for Moana, and he works with Disney a lot.
Yeah,
which is
I
great.
like that rock song from Moana. You're welcome.
Yeah.
There's a documentary called Being Elmo, and they
Yes.
actually go through the creation of Elmo.
Wasn't there a massive scandal behind the guy?
The guy, I think, he's suspected of child stuff.
Right, but you know what? It didn't seem to affect Elmo at all, which separates the art from the artist, which means you can like Michael Jackson, you can like...
If you don't like Michael Jackson, you shouldn't like Elmo.
Correct. For the same reason.
Yeah.
That's Michael Jackson and Elmo combined.
Yeah.
Don't stop till you get enough. Keep up. They're pretty similar. Same vocal range.
Yeah.
Keep up. With the don't stop. Don't stop till you get. Wow.
Both childish fella
We
people.
we just linked Michael Jackson and Elmo. That's something to think about.
Only on Buckle Up.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Don't you agree with me? I saw you kicking dirt in my eye. But it's very close.
Yeah.
What else is going on? This was a big week for conspiracy meeting mainstream.
Yeah, we haven't
Have to
spoken
talk
about
about
it in a
this.
couple of weeks, but yeah.
Ooh, you want to try to not talk about COVID all the time because it's not. Forget all the death and destruction. As a conversation piece, it's so boring after a while. That's the worst part of it. No, obviously, it's caused so much, stress, anxiety, illness, death, all those things. But it keeps coming up as this unavoidable topic. So sometimes you just need to take breaks from it. But now, Joe Rogan this past week.
So what happened?
Okay. So Joe Rogan's been having a series of people on to speak out against the mainstream narratives about COVID. Bret Weinstein, Heather Heyer. They were one of the first people I saw with a counter narrative.
Yeah, that was in the heat of COVID. They were talking about how it's totally plausible that this thing started in a lab. And at the time, it was very, very taboo.
They were censored. They were flagged. They were all these things. They were demonetized. And what they were doing was basically, I'll talk about Dark Horse podcast for a minute, and then we'll build up to the most recent episode, because I have been following that, not necessarily agreeing with all of it, but the Dark Horse podcast, Bret Weinstein and Heather Heyer.
And who's Bret Weinstein? Because a lot of people don't know.
Weinstein is a guy. Bret Weinstein is an evolutionary biologist. He's the brother of Eric Weinstein. And he rose to prominence because he was fired from Evergreen University.
In Vermont, right?
In Washington State, I believe.
Oh.
Okay. Totally wrong. And he protested against they had a day where they wanted no whites to come to school in solidarity, for racial solidarity. It kind of made no sense. They wanted to ban, I guess, non-minorities from coming to university. And as a liberal, Bernie supporting professor, he said, you cannot do that. You can't ban people from coming to university based on their race. And he spoke out against it. And there was mass protest. This was in the heyday of Trump era counter woke movements, protesting all over campuses, canceling speakers, canceling Ben Shapiro's and the Milo Yiannopoulos, all of that. So it was part of that wave. Yeah. And so he went rogue and basically started his own.
He got fired.
He got fired and then started his own endeavor. You would be suspect of it. That's what you would say. He enjoys this too much. But I'd say he went on, started podcasting, and I guess started the Dark Horse podcast. I don't know the timeline after that of how it became to be. He began doing debates with Sam Harris, basically joined the intellectual dark web circles, and started speaking out and voicing his opinion about politics, social issues, things like that.
Right, very unpopular opinions that he thought
not even too.
Well, they were mainstream.
He's become more controversial. He was not a controversial figure until COVID.
Yeah.
So then in COVID, he has this podcast with Heather Heyer,
his wife, right?
No,
it's not his wife.
No, I don't think so.
Oh.
I don't think so. No, they're just. I think there's a lot of sexual tension there, which is funny to parody. They're sitting there, like, anyway, Brent, what do you want to do later? Well, here's the thing, Heather. And I'm going to do a parody where they just start making out at the end. I think that with ivermectin. I keep thinking about that. But he started this podcast, and they were the first people I saw just asking questions, just going, wait. So what's going on here? And that's the most gracious way to describe it. They were just asking questions, but they were, from a scientific, rational perspective, saying, well, so the thing is about these vaccines, when they do come out, we want to say they can be harmful. That doesn't mean they're dangerous. Saying very confusing intellectual stuff.
I'm very highly vaccinated. I just have not taken this vaccine.
Now, it's true that this is an issue of game theory, and the spike proteins are cytotoxic. Now, we have to be very careful. Everything he says is couched, and we have to be very careful. Yeah. Nothing is certain. And she talks like this weird whisper, oh, yeah. That's how she sounds. But they were just talking about ivermectin and all these alternative treatments to COVID. And
very scientific, very boring.
And that made them, and the backlash to them by YouTube and demonetization and all these things is what made them this controversial thing. Otherwise, they were just talking, from my perspective, I was like, oh, that's interesting. He's talking about different ways to treat COVID. Nobody knew how to do it yet. There were no vaccines yet readily available. So they were discussing it openly, and it became, he had to go on Joe Rogan to say, my channel's been suspended. And so he went on Joe Rogan to try to appeal to the powers that be to bring his stuff back.
And the part I think that's going to connect to what we're going to say about these recent guests on Joe Rogan is he was having as far as I understood at least, the leaders in their field, these world-renowned experts talking about their chosen field, like genetics, immunology, virology, whatever it is. And those and those episodes are being taken off of YouTube as misinformation,
Mm-hmm.
which he always thought. I was like, how can the leading expert in virology be giving misinformation? Like he gives the information.
Mm-hmm.
He's the one who knows what he's talking about. How can you call that misinformation?
Yeah, and that is the most disturbing thing. Was there was a propaganda initiative to label anything that dissented from the centralized public health narrative about what to do about COVID and how to handle these things. Anything that deviated from that was simply labeled misinformation and therefore dangerous. And dangerous and big, and you have big tech, government, big pharma, everyone on one side here setting those rules and having that control to censor or shut down or silence, demonetize, all these kinds of things, which set everyone else to say, okay, I don't want to believe, it worked. In other words, you said something that you heard on Dark Horse podcast. People go, oh, didn't you hear that
The guy's a kook.
that the guy's a kook? But my whole thing is, don't we have enough of a bird's eye view to look down and say, hey, we were also told to say that guy's a kook? Can't you see that?
Right.
Forget what you agree with or disagree with using your own critical thinking. Can't we see the game that's being played so overtly? That's one of my big questions. To anyone who might disagree with me, it's like, yeah, I know you think he's good. I know you think that talking about is crazy. Until the Wuhan lab leak turns out to be very plausible because the appropriate people said so, and now we can believe that. Beforehand, you get kicked off of Facebook for saying something.
Yeah.
It made conversation amongst reasonable people impossible because it what's the word? It instilled this distrust over certain ideas.
Right.
Because you're like, oh, that's idea is that on that side, and I've been told. But can't you see that you've been told that?
Yeah.
As much as I've been told this,
Right.
let's look above that and say, what do we think here?
And it's very implicit. I just saw a New Yorker article about a profile of Dan Bongino. Is that how you say his name? Don Bongino?
Don Bongino,
know
we
that
don't
guy.
talk about Bongino, no.
Do you know what I'm talking about? He's like one of the biggest. He has like a silly name. He's one of the biggest like right wing radio hosts.
Dan Bongino or
Something like
Dan
that?
Carlin?
Not Carlin.
Dan Bongino?
Something like that. You know what I'm talking about?
You are getting it wrong. I have to tell you.
Yeah, I am getting it wrong.
Bongino?
I thought that's the name. I'm saying I wasn't even familiar with him. I just know.
What does he look like? Do you know?
He look, I think, like shaved head, ex-military type
Yes.
guy.
Okay. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but it's that guy.
It's that guy.
He's always like,
Yeah.
listen up. And he like
Right.
brings on Candace Owens and they high five and things
Right.
like
So
that.
so in it,
Yes.
there was just kind of a throwaway line. It was like this guy's show. He's in the same cohort as Alex Jones, Joe Rogan.
They threw them all in
And
together.
they threw them all in together, and I was just like, Joe Rogan and Alex Jones, I guess in some sense could be thrown in together in like a bucket, but like if you listen to what they're saying, they say very, very different things. And sure,
buddies,
Alex
you know.
Jones is on Joe Rogan.
You
but
listen
like,
here, you listen to Joe Rogan, you listen really good. Because I love Joe Rogan, but he is wrong and blah, blah, blah.
but in little implicit ways like that, you start to learn. Okay, Joe Rogan's on the side of crazy people, and then there's me. I'm saying with lines like that by respected journalists,
Even though
you're
the
like,
frog's gay, turns out to be. Alex Jones has been
yeah, I know.
treated well by history at some. He's successfully become, side note, I'd say for the majority of people, when I see comments on his stuff, he has morphed and jumped categories from toxic, crazy journalist that's evil to fun entertainer. I don't know how he did it. I don't know how he did it. But now he goes on, he's like, I love Alex. He's just a fun-loving, crazy teddy bear. Which is maybe what he was always meant to be. But back in the day, we all looked at him like, I listen to Alex Jones secretly because, like Tim Dillon used to say, I used to put you on before I go to sleep and go to sleep to the sound of your voice. Oh, you listener. They are taking people and they're going to Bohemian Grove. And he was seen as a real, troublemaker.
Yeah.
And they are turning you all into animal humanoid hybrids because that's what they're doing. I'm sorry. Anyway, off of that point, we were lumping everyone into these categories of the unmentionables. Just this weird, toxic, very much taken from the school of propaganda of how to a campaign to demonize specific opinions and narratives and ideas and people.
And devil's advocate, what would the censors say they were trying to do?
Okay. So
But by doing that, what do you think there was a good intention behind all
what's
that?
the CEO of Twitter?
The
Jack.
former one
Jack.
was Jack Dorsey.
When he was on Joe Rogan, those didn't violate our policies. They basically take this weird stance of, I don't know, if I'm being gracious, like if I have to
be
assume
gracious.
benefit of the doubt, what are they
Yeah.
trying to do? Yeah, because it's a harder point to prove that they're being like. Why would they want to?
I think there's an interesting narrative that there's this organized effort to accomplish something, but I sometimes think it's
I think that look, this
right.
might come across as. I think that a lot of people in tech, in Silicon Valley and in tech, are left leaning.
Mhm.
In other words, they are motivated by ideology more than just the service they're providing.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean fully that they're using it to accomplish a political goal, but they've said overtly, to the extent that they can make society better, they have a little bit of this megalomania. We can make everything better. We can connect everybody. And we have this responsibility with that to tell people what to think or to make sure they're thinking responsibly. In other words, I think they're motivated by this sense that they're these philosopher kings that are, fostering but also irresponsible to control the dialogue to make sure what they believe is the right information gets out there. Meaning it might be genuine that they think it's misinformation.
Yeah.
And that vaccines are super important and we need to get out of this pandemic.
Yeah.
And we are going to use our resources and our tools at our disposal. This isn't such a conscious thing, I don't think. But when they see what they label as misinformation, or before they even label it misinformation, the decision to label it misinformation comes from, we believe that vaccines and only vaccines are the only way out of this pandemic. We want everyone to get healthy and get out of this pandemic.
Yeah.
So therefore, any information that causes vaccine hesitancy, the ends justify the means. The means being labeling it misinformation and distancing it so that people don't get confused. Now, confusion is kind of a part of learning. It's kind of a part of dialoguing, hearing different opinions. You can't expect people to make up their mind right away. But as long as that conversation is persisting and that dialogue in the alternative media spaces, it's causing problems to achieve this end goal of ending the pandemic, let's say. But they were canceling people before that too of dissenting opinions because they have determined that we know how society should run. We know what the politics should be. We know what the best things are. And they have that sense of superiority so that any ideas, not just about COVID, that we deem harmful, we can shut down. They're entitled to do it. They're private companies in a sense. So I'm not being so gracious there, but I can't say that. I can only say what my gut instinct is telling me, given the patterns of behavior I've seen. Otherwise, the selection of conservatives disproportionately being shut down on YouTube until it's clearly has a bent.
Yeah. I think it's more amoral than that. I don't think Jack Dorsey is left in the way in the way we talk about left now. I think he's probably more of like a anarchist, like
a narco-socialist.
A narco-socialist.
Anarcho is a term that is used to say I don't really believe in government, and I just
I think like
maybe
him
he's
and
like
also
that.
Mark Zuckerberg. I don't think he thinks in terms of like morals, whatever. But
I just
I think they were trying.
But then how can you explain them falling in line?
I think
with the narrative.
I think they were probably trying to appease these governments and these politicians who were actively trying to like control their futures with regulation, and they're like, sure, whatever, if that's what you want us to do, yeah, we'll play ball.
So you think they're playing ball in order to cozy up to the powers that be that could otherwise punish them?
Yes, but also with the mainstream narratives that are be putting out. They're like, yeah, we'll help you enforce that. Like those seem good to us, sure.
But do you think the government pressures them to censor, or they're the ones who censor and cause this?
I think it's implicit. I don't think there's this. Well, let's get to the rest of the story.
Yes,
first.
fine. Anyway, so that all started with the Dark Cars podcast. Yeah. And again, everything we said is not necessarily, this is all just based on my experience and observation. Right. Okay, we've gotten some pushback saying, how could you guys talk about these things? Because we want to talk about them. That's the answer. Okay, deal with it. A certain someone. Small stuff. I won't say who, but people say you can't talk about these things. I don't get that.
Right.
Yes, it's a public podcast.
Yeah.
We're having a conversation. I'm not saying we know what we're talking about.
Right. And you don't have to listen. You can still like it and comment in it on tell your friends to listen to us.
Correct.
And follow us. But you don't have to listen.
Correct.
Okay?
Okay. Anyway. That was for a very special someone. Okay, so the Dark Cars podcast was one of the first podcasts I saw doing it. And anyway, in this space, Joe Rogan started having these same guests on. I think Bret Weinstein brought it to the fold a little bit, if I follow from my experience, brought it to Joe Rogan's attention that this was happening, the shutting down of certain opinions. So Joe Rogan became aware of these doctors who were, had different opinions about how to treat COVID.
Not even it was more like certain narratives. For instance, there's more than one way out of this pandemic, more than just vaccinating everybody. There might be another way out of it.
My biggest question is also why why isn't this is the being an idealistic about it? Why isn't everybody all hands on deck? Let's try everything, whatever works. You would want
Right.
it to function that way,
Right.
especially in medicine. You would want it to just be. Some doctor said this worked. Great. He has his credentials enough to, and instead he gets demonized or comes out. To me, it's clearly such a result and symptom of government and medicine combining. When it's the government and medicine and the free choices are taken out of it, or the government feels like it has to respond and do things and implement policies, one size fits all, that completely crowds out any room for dissent or different things because they're passing rules.
Right. It seems like the feeling is this is so serious and so dire, and the stakes are so high. There's no time to discuss. We're going with the leading experts who say vaccination, vaccination, and anyone else who disrupts that or discourages it or prevents it from moving forward as quickly as possible is like harming all their fellow Americans and all their fellow citizens of the world. That's how it feels.
I know. One
That's how
could
it
make the
feels.
counter argument that it's an emergency. We need every
no, I
intellectual
know.
mind and
Right.
medical mind and scientific mind at this with all of their ideas
Right.
to see what works.
Right.
I don't understand why that's not as compelling.
Right.
Why doesn't that work? Why doesn't that resonate? Why are people like, no, not that? You heard that person said something crazy. What was one time here? Don't listen to. Someone said, hey, I have a lab and I've been treating patients with such and such medication.
Right.
No, that's an unmentionable medication.
Or even
makes zero sense.
Or even
to
with
me.
the lab, like it wasn't like, all right, there's some people who think it might come from lab. If we knew where it came from, it might help us like treat this thing. Instead, it was like, no, if you talk about it as a lab, it's gonna prevent us from treating it in this very particular way. So shut up because you're hurting everybody.
A lot of politics on the left have to do with ends justifying the means in a lot of ways.
I don't know about all that.
But in some ways, there is forget left, right, and center or politics. There does seem to be this ends justify the means.
Yeah, that's how this whole thing
approach.
has very much felt.
I think whenever government gets involved in things, they don't take a cost benefit analysis approach. They just say, well, if it gets us to here, anything that's worth getting to here, lockdown, school closures, economic disaster, whatever it may be, as long as we get to here, they hold that as the on the pedestal, and anything in between is worth it because we got to here.
Right.
Any amount of money, it doesn't matter. You know, there's no such thing as being about waste or diligence or any of these things because we have to get to here. Right. And a lot of times that seems to dominate. That's a certain way of thinking about problem solving as opposed to trade-offs
and crucial to that like dynamic of like anything justifies we have to get to here is like making sure everybody's terrified of the alternative.
Right.
Like if we don't get there, something really, really, really awful is going to happen.
That's, and you get compliance. That's how you get compliance.
Right. That's just how it would have to be. So anyway, so we have these people going on.
So we have people going on Joe Rogan,
yeah.
and eventually he gets these other doctors, Peter McCullough. I didn't see that episode as much.
Dr. Peter McCullough.
And then the most recent episode is the one I think is causing the most.
This one's kind of weird, yeah.
Dr. Robert Malone.
Right, so
his eyes don't open, which is weird. Okay. So I was working in, how is it, Michael? I watched a bit of it and got some of it. Do I have it down?
He looks like George Lucas a little bit.
A little bit.
Less chin.
With less chin. Yeah. More beard, less chin. I treated it with thymidine. My lungs were on fire. And they tried to shut me down. Okay.
That's pretty good.
Okay.
That's pretty good. Was that the impression you wanted to show me?
No. Okay. That's not my new impression. Wait, I'm still working on it, and I can't figure out a way to parody this episode because I actually find it so important. I can't do it.
A few weeks ago, before Dr. Malone, there was a guy named Dr. Peter McCullough who came on, and he kind of presents himself as like
the most doctor. I laugh.
The most well-published, well-respected guy in the world. But he seemed very self-promoting, and he went from like I think a very reasonable point, which is why has this solution always been vaccines instead of at-home treatment? Why has the only solution that we've been getting been vaccines? Meaning from the very beginning, the narrative has been we have to get a vaccine to get back to normalcy. His question was why hasn't there been alternative solutions such as treating people at home so they don't have to go to the hospital, so we keep the hospitals like only for the very, very, very sick. It was sort of a reasonable question, and then he went like right down the rabbit hole into mass formation. What's it called? Delusion or something. So we're like
mass delusion?
Yeah, we're like the whole country and the whole world has been tricked by the government to believing something that's not true. And there's this huge worldwide conspiracy between government and health organizations, social media to destroy the world. And I think he ended up kind of looking like a kook. And then this week it seemed like Joe Rogan wanted to have somebody a little bit more who seemed like maybe like a little more like stable
Digestible.
and digestible. And in this episode, this guy actually mentioned, oh, like McCullough's $150,000 in debt because they're taking his license away and he's like suing the hospital.
He also stood by. He also vouched for him as being super.
He vouched for him, but even more so, it's like when a guy's $150,000 in debt, you know, whatever he says has to be like you don't know.
Yeah,
what
but
he's
chicken
say.
or egg. He's $150,000 debt because he spoke out. So it's not like he was and then needed the money, so he decided to cause a shit.
I stand by it.
I got it. Also, I think he was speaking out. He had more to say criticizing vaccines than just vaccines for kids, which is, it seems like Robert Malone was talking about the next phase. He's blowing the whistle on vaccines for kids because he himself is vaccinated, Robert Malone, this doctor on Joe Rogan. Yeah. But I think there is an observable difference when the vaccine rolled out. You saw like 90, from my understanding, there was a 90% decrease in hospitalizations. It was really effective and prevented that first.
You're 10 times more likely to not get hospitalized if you have a vaccine.
Right. All those things are compelling. I got it. You know, I got my double vax, then I had a breakthrough case, and then so I feel super. Apparently, that's super immunity from according to one headline that I liked. So I'll stick with that one. It said that somewhere. It was an alert. It was a notification on my phone that said vaccinated people plus a breakthrough are super immune. So now I just say I'm super immune because of that one notification on my phone. That's all I need. But the fact that there's not this medical consensus, or at least to my eyes, doesn't seem that way, is the most disturbing thing. I know that there's always a rigorous debate about it, but when you have these whistleblowers who, I don't know, someone has to debunk him. What I want Robert Malone to sit down with Fauci on Joe Rogan and see what happens.
Yeah. So, but what happened makes that impossible because Malone was banned. This doctor who
we haven't set it up.
Invented so set it up.
Okay, Dr. Robert Malone is what we're getting to because that was the episode that was posted on Joe Rogan last week, and he was invited on before to speak about this. He's one of the inventors of the mRNA vaccines in the 80s. Did a lot of work on all sorts of viruses, I think AIDS and a bunch of other things, and was one of the inventors of the tech for the mRNA vaccines. And in speaking out against the way COVID treatments and policies and vaccinations have been implemented, he was just banned permanently from Twitter. Mm-hmm. And people are saying, if I can't listen to him on Twitter, I think it was Bret Weinstein, if we can't listen to Dr. Robert Malone on Twitter, who can we listen to? Then what is the point of all this?
Who is an expert?
And he kept calling Dr. Fauci. He's like, I know Tony Fauci. Tony. When you say it like that, I'm like, the way he presented, the way he came across, and I still have to research exactly who he is and all of that, but when I'm watching it, this guy seems on par and in that world, working with the World Health Organization, worked with all these people, know these people by name. So it's not like he's some kook.
Right. I think he's had $1 billion in grants.
Yeah, no credibility. He has a ton of credibility. He comes on and is one of the inventors. So you can't doubt his, I don't know what the motives are. You can't doubt his credentials and his knowledge and his authority on this. Yeah. So when a guy like that comes on to the biggest platform in the world right now and is saying the things he's saying about, I have to finish the episode.
Yeah, I have to finish it too. It's like over 3 hours.
It's long. So whatever. But I read a lot of the bullet points and things statements he was making. But when somebody says that and puts their name behind it, you have to ask yourself, it should give you pause. So what's going on here? Talking about data manipulation. And I have trouble believing the mass cover-up, the mass conspiracy on a global scale, because things like that seem way too hard to pull off and too unbelievable.
But the more, I think the part that relates to us more is less the content of his argument against vaccines and more that he was banned from social media. And the clips of him on Joe Rogan were taken off of YouTube. Mm-hmm. So somebody who wants to know the other side of this narrative from experts, pretty difficult to find online.
Right.
Unless you dig like real deep into the Google results.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, what he could never say, Joe Rogan kept trying to ask him, so what do you think is behind all this? Well, Joe, remember, I'm not making accusations. I don't know. But if you follow the money.
He can't assign motive, he kept saying.
Well, he can't, really.
Yeah, and legally he can't.
Legally he can't, but that is the biggest thing. Whenever I get into arguments with people about where we should be and like frustrations of lockdowns and masks and all these things, you have to ask yourself, like, what do public health officials, what do these people that go to work every day, like you talked about, and are, have the best interest of trying to get everybody out of this? Why would we be shutting down treatments? Like, I can't fathom the reasons behind it. The things that could stand out to me is that because Pfizer and Moderna, these pharmaceutical companies, are contracted directly by the government, there's a massive financial incentive for them to say our treatments are the only ones to use to corner the market. You can make that claim, but that's a claim, not substantiated. But that does introduce, obvious collusion, corruption when you have the pharmaceutical companies not competing on the marketplace for good drugs. Yeah. They're not competing with treatments in the hospital. They have a contract with the government for billions of dollars. Yeah. I still got one. But now with the kids and this idea of mandating vaccines and forcing people to do it eliminates discussion. That's the whole point. If they just made everything suggestive, there wouldn't be this guy on Joe Rogan blowing the whistle. He would maybe give information, but it wouldn't be as urgent.
Right. And Crystal and Zagar, I think, had a good point about it today, which is you and I probably wouldn't even be talking about the vaccine or this episode if he was never banned. Like it elevates these people who get banned to the same way a book gets burned. You're like, well, I got to see what's in that book.
Yeah. Jordan Peterson said that about social justice warriors on Joe Rogan. Yeah. It's like, I figured out a way to monetize social justice warriors, Joe. Ha ha ha. They make a stink about me and then my numbers go up.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So if I would have just kind of heard a balanced argument from someone like Dr. Sanjay Gupta on CNN, like I don't want to listen to a 3-hour episode with like some dude who invented a vaccine. Like just give me both sides of the argument and like I'm good. You don't need these people now who are like also now on Joe Rogan. They're not going over the pro side of the vaccine because they're so enraged and inflamed over the fact that they haven't heard the anti-vaccine argument. So they only go super hard on the anti-vaccine argument. That's all you get from them, and all you get from CNN is the pro-vaccine argument, and it's just not so helpful, and they can't talk to each other.
I saw a tweet because everybody's talking about this episode in Joe Rogan, and they're calling him the controversial, provocative podcaster. Right. And I responded, I said, if having open conversations with people all across the political and intellectual spectrum is controversial, the problem isn't Joe Rogan.
Nice.
Thug life. I got to retweet.
Nice.
Yeah. Maybe 2. I have to check. So we'll see.
Are you on Twitter?
Yeah. AJ Comedy on Twitter. There's not much of a thing going on there, but I am. Buckle Up's on Twitter too, by the way.
Yeah. I got to get on that.
Yeah, Michael, come on. Yeah. Meaning, what are you talking? Like, he's as controversial as you're willing to cover him that way.
Yeah.
Even if he has an opinion that's kind of crazy, it's an opinion of a guy who's popular and fun to listen to. And
well, did you see the chart that just came out?
Yes, but he blew them out of the water.
He gets 11 million viewers per episode. Tucker Carlson gets how many? 3.24 million. Per episode. He's what is that? Almost quadruple what the biggest cable news host gets. So there are a lot of people walking around with this information and talking about it with their friends.
What information?
Like all this like alternative like stuff that's supposedly underground. Like this.
Do you think a lot of this just comes from resentment from the mainstream that people that are they're just obsolete and irrelevant and they're hating on Joe?
I do think I don't think it's organized, but I just think any business has its business plan and you have to compete, and like this is the way they're competing. So with this new show, they're trying to discredit it.
So if those numbers are available for everybody, why isn't CNN being smart and having people on?
So the new CEO,
that makes you think it's political and not financial.
There's a new CEO who's running CNN now, and I think Zucker is out, and he has said as much. He's the one.
He said what? Let's bring him on.
Well, he said we have to get back to the middle. And he's the one who it seems like he was instrumental in getting Cuomo out. He was like, we've lost our authority and we need to change things at CNN. So it seems
getting Chris Cuomo out.
Yeah, getting Chris Cuomo out after like he didn't do anything. He did
out of the ordinary.
He did what he did months and years ago. Yeah. He just wasn't kicked off until like a few weeks ago. So it seems like he's going to come in, and he's going to maybe learn a lesson from these other shows.
It's just an argument against this as a purely financial motive, because if it was, they would be copying Joe and not criticizing him. Instead, they're going against him.
That's interesting.
Or they're appealing to a demographic that they're still trying to hold on to, legacy-wise.
Yeah, I think these things.
Or it's political, where a lot of journalism and journalists lean to the left and want to fall in line. I don't know.
But left is more like, if you're truly liberal, you should have like a liberal amount of opinions coming in, so you could decide for yourself. That's not
liberal. Left is different than liberal.
Okay.
Liberal the difference between leftism and liberalism, I mean, semantically to me, is that a liberal might believe the government should have higher taxes and have more programs and social spending, but they also believe in free speech, marketplace of ideas. Sam Harris is a liberal, but he's called an alt-right crazy by the leftists.
Right. Yeah, I think Joe Rogan is a liberal.
And Bill Maher is a liberal.
Right.
And yeah, Joe Rogan's a liberal, but he also likes guns and things. So, but you know,
doesn't necessarily make you illiberal.
He likes big guns. And eating elk. No, I hear you. Yeah, so he doesn't present like he doesn't look like a liberal. But yes, he's more liberal. Sam Harris more liberal. There's that whole liberal sliver that's just a shrinking group of people. Bret Weinstein says he's a liberal, but a leftist is like the authoritarian left.
Got it.
Or the Marxist left that believes in real sort of, what's the word? The proletariat.
Yeah.
Certain people are going to kill me for getting this wrong. The
labor.
There's a phrase for the Yeah, they believe in sort of there's more ideological motivations that lead to more authoritarian results, I think, in terms of a all-encompassing, all-knowing government that rules over everyone.
I saw a movie about Karl Marx. It was very convincing.
His name was Karl?
Carl.
I knew that. Anyway, I don't want to get too much in those weeds, but the point is there's a distinction between the liberal who believes a certain role of government to play in society, but as far as intellectual ideas and a marketplace of ideas and freedom of speech, they're all about it. And there's an alliance there that has formed where it's I would say that the difference is more that there's a political difference, not an ideological difference or something like that. But anyway, so it's disturbing. We're in a disturbing place now. I think it has shifted. The whole Getter thing that Joe Rogan went to Getter as an insurance policy.
Yeah.
Did you see that? I signed up, by the way.
Yeah, I think I'm going to sign up
just
also.
To see what's up over there.
Just to see what's up with it. Yeah, exactly. Well, because I've been watching this show Station 11, which is about I'm going to get back to it, which is about it's about basically COVID. If COVID had a 99% death rate, and I listen to a lot of Tim Dillon. I listen to a lot of Joe Rogan. And on Sunday, I ingested certain things that just made my mind go deep down the rabbit hole. And I heard some really sad news about this child in my daughter's daycare that was in the hospital, and I was very convinced that there's going to be another virus. And we have to be on something like Getter, because if you're on Twitter, you're not going to get the right information. And so if you really want to be prepared for the next one, the next pandemic, you have to have these alternative news sources.
It's amazing what Tylenol PM can do.
I know. Taking up Tylenol PM.
First of all, what's weird about that is there's an inverse reaction you had. In other words, the place where people are getting all the mainstream stuff and the big tech, big three, Facebook, Twitter, whatever, YouTube, that's what's causing the alarmism that you felt. It's the alternative media stuff that is pushing more data-based, rational solutions, in my opinion. And yet you said we need to go there because there's going to be a crazy virus. So your mind was marrying two pieces together.
My first takeaway was I got to take a break from Tim Dillon.
Yeah, but you were saying we need Tim Dillon because I'm paranoid. In other words, you got the worst of both.
Yeah. Right. I just got the paranoia. But
with the energy of alternative media and the paranoia, you bought into the mainstream narrative and felt the need to be consoled by the alternative narrative, and it fucked you up.
Yeah.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah. It was weird. It was weird. Well, it's scary if you listen to what these guys are really saying. Like, if you really think about climate change, it's like super scary. You can't think about it.
Want to go there?
No, I don't want to go there.
All right, let's do it.
I don't want to go there. But but overall, things like Dr. Robert Malone getting kicked off Twitter does seriously make me consider, for the next crisis, where are you going for your news? And if you're going to Twitter, it's now missing somebody who might have some kind of useful information for us. Like, maybe he is a kook, and maybe he has like maybe he's like a secret like fascist who's crazy and thinks all the frogs are gay and the Jews are trying to kill us. Who knows? He's also a doctor and he might have something useful to say.
So even if he believes all that, he's also a doctor.
Yeah, he might have a useful piece of data.
You're
that
just
we're
being an
not gonna be
absolutist
able
on
to
free
get.
speech. So you're saying no matter what the person is or you feel about his
No,
character.
I mean, no, not necessarily. I mean, I don't think the same goes for some dude in like a cabin in like Michigan or whatever. Like this is a really important guy with an important mind and important experience, and like you can't tolerate anything just because you can't tolerate one thing he says. Now we lost him because most people aren't getting Getter. I probably won't get Getter. I don't want like another thing on my phone. I don't want to like support the guy who got Trump elected. Really, like because it's.
Guy?
The guy who like ran Trump's data team, I think, started Getter. Like whatever, I don't like really want to get it, but like I want to be.
He's
informed.
a great guy. Sorry, couldn't resist.
I want to be informed.
Getter good, folks. Really
Getter's also no better. I think.
Getter no better.
in their terms and policies, I think it says you can't say anything negative about Trump. They don't believe in
Does it
free
really
speech.
say that?
They don't believe in free
Does
speech.
it say that overtly?
I'm pretty sure it does.
That's pretty wild.
I'm pretty sure it does. No, it's wild. They don't believe in free speech either.
Getter is founded by Trump in that SPAC. That's Getter.
No. That's something else. That's Trump's own thing.
That's what I thought
Getter,
that was.
No, Getter. I think this guy.
You might be. I got to see Getter's policies. The thing is, free
I'm pretty
speech,
sure it
liberty,
does.
ideas, except criticize Trump. I mean, that's so obviously a contradiction.
I know. No, it's crazy. It's crazy. I don't think they're.
But I get it. Sensitive time. Sensitive time, folks. We got to do it. We're going to do it quite quickly. Did you see? Did you see Trump and Candace Owens?
Yeah, you showed it
That
to
was
me.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Because the cognitive dissonance there, where Candace expected him to be on a certain team and a certain set of points that she was sort of thinking she was giving him an assist.
Right.
So these vaccines, she was like, the most beautiful vaccines, an amazing scientific achievement that we created them, folks, in record time. She's like, but like, okay, but I'm asking the kids. No, I can't ask the kids. She was like so desperate to get the common ground. It's the president. She worships him. And it was a great display of her own biases becoming jogged.
Yeah.
Because I do think Candace Owens, unfortunately, it does not act in good faith.
Yeah.
Of all the people on that team, there's a problem there. She even got on Twitter afterwards and started comforting her fans, saying Trump is still mainstream in a way. He's still in that world. We forget. He doesn't listen to what we're listening to. And I'm like, Candace.
Won't she pivot though to whatever she has to pivot to stay relevant?
I think she might pivot to like what the team that she wants to be on pivots to. But she wants to project a certain brand, and if that brand goes that way, she's going to go that way. It's just that she says a lot of things that are so overtly spit back of what she thinks she's supposed to say to project a certain brand. It seems very obvious.
How did Chappelle describe her?
I can't say. I mean, I could. Thank you.
No, not that. I think he said, is there anyone who's smarter and sounds dumber than Candace Owens? Something like that.
Yeah.
Like, have you ever
could have
met
been the
such a
opposite.
smart, dumb person?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe. I don't remember because he went off on her. I don't go off on her from that angle. It's more that she goes on espousing a lot of views that, I've read a lot of certain people that have influenced her, but she tries to talk with authority on things that she may have a right conclusion in some way, but her ability to get there and defend an argument is weak, and so it makes the conclusion look weak. And I don't like that. That's very self-defeating. When I see somebody going on behalf of ideas that I support, but looking foolish, I'm like, come on. That's really, really disheartening to see, as opposed to someone I just disagree with. And also just pretending to be genuine about certain things. And the way even talking about vaccines, we all know this. We all know this vaccine, and it's sickening. The way she talks about it as if it's a common knowledge that there's this conspiracy, and we all know it. It's like, that's irresponsible too, And you're ignoring inconvenient facts for yourself. You're just guilty of the same thing.
Right.
She does it all the time. So with Trump there bragging about his vaccine, and she was just like, but people have to choose. Oh, you people have to have that freedom. Of course, you have to have your freedom, folks. You have to have freedom. But it's a beautiful vaccine. We've done an amazing job. Fantastic. And we did it quite quickly.
And he was also he's such a dick because like he knew he was so unkind to her, like he knows her deal and like he knew exactly what he was doing to her and he just had no regard for her like career well-being.
Some analysts were like, Trump is making the 2024 play right here because look how reasonable he's going to look next to Candace, and he's going to say, he's going to be now all pro-vaccine because.
Can you imagine how effective he would be if he just said reasonable things?
Right.
That everyone wanted to hear.
But a lot of his strategy, according to Scott Adams, to bring that back was to say crazy things, walk it back, and by the time he got to reasonable, which wouldn't have worked at first, sound totally reasonable.
Or would it be easier to just say some things that are already reasonable?
I think so in a way, but who knows? I mean, we can't deny the underdog that Trump was in 2016 and got to where he got to all the way through. So you have to question the strategy there in its efficacy, not whether you agree with him or not, but just these things he says, how intentional are they? How much strategy? How much is it calculated? Because it keeps, for a while, it kept working for him to everybody's complete confusion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I have a new impression, Michael.
Yeah, I wanted
to wrap up on it.
Okay.
Because we're coming to our close and we covered mostly COVID. I hope we don't get banned on this episode. We're just talking.
Banned? Yeah. And well, we're not experts. Why would they ban us?
We are not experts. We are giving opinions.
We have no idea what we're talking about.
I think it would be ironic and hilarious. Sometimes when we bring up the word COVID, it says, this may contain some information or it does this and that.
Yeah.
I want to get your friend back on who called in about the vaccines for
Dr.
kids
Dusty,
and stuff.
yeah,
After this,
I'll get him. I also want to mention my cousin Jason. He put out a video. I just thought it was worth just mentioning quickly. He had a non-COVID virus. It was really awful, but he ended up in the hospital. He almost died.
Wow.
And he was in the ICU for a couple of weeks, I think. He lost like a lot of weight. He looked like awful. And he put out a video.
Great diet hack virus.
He put out a video after saying, he needed an ICU bed or he probably wouldn't have survived. And if it was, it happened to be in like a low point. If it was taken up by someone who hadn't gotten the vaccine, and he would have died. Like,
I understand
that would have been bad.
Yeah.
So he was saying, go get your vaccine. So people
But it depends. No, of course it would have been bad. And I definitely hear that argument about hospital beds. My question has always been, are they really to what extent are they at capacity the way that we act as if they're always at capacity without actually knowing the severity of the situation? Yeah. Some people say absolutely yes, in this case, and this in this case, and you'd have to listen to hospital administrators in some way. I mean, what other incentive do they have? Although Dr. Malone did claim that there's a big financial benefit to administering COVID patients, which is weird. Right. He said that. Yeah.
But we both consider ourselves amateur hospital administrators.
Yeah, I think so. I looked into it.
Yeah, we read about it.
I watched a YouTube video.
Fair amount.
Yeah. Whatchamacallit? You remember the movie Liar Liar?
Sure.
So remember, it's the Claw.
Yeah.
Jerry?
Yeah.
Ooh, the Claw's coming at you. He was a hospital administrator.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I've seen that movie.
Remember, he's
times.
like, we're moving to Boston. He's like, I've got a hospital to run.
I don't remember that.
I can't go. He's like, I, on the other hand, have to go.
What do you think?
I have a hospital to run.
What do you think?
Ooh, the Claw's coming at you.
He was
a hospital administrator, so I have experience at least watching an actor play a hospital administrator where the role of the hospital administration did not come up once in the movie. What was your question?
I wonder what he thinks of COVID. I wonder what that character thinks of COVID.
Ooh, the COVID's coming at you. Ooh, COVID's coming at you.
He was also Robin Hood in Robin Hood Men in Tights.
Yes, he was, and the Princess Bride. Wasn't he the Princess Bride?
I never saw that movie.
Well, that's the most controversial thing you've said this episode.
I know it, yeah. I missed that one
Tell
for some reason.
Something. Remember that? Oh, you didn't see it. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
I saw it in camp in a summer thing. They put it on. I'm like, what is this? And everybody knew it but me. It was one of those, The Princess Bride.
Yeah.
My name is Inigo Montoya.
Yeah.
You know that, right?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know the stuff.
Okay.
So you want to wrap up on this impression?
I have a new impression.
Okay. Should I drink water before you do it?
Maybe, yeah. I don't know if you like it. I'm hyping it up too much. Steve Harvey.
All right.
It's so great. I came across a clip on TikTok or something, and I'm setting it up. It won't be great yet, but I posted a video of it today because it was just making. I haven't had an impression that made me laugh so much because there's something about Steve Harvey that I've noticed that when he talks, every time he says anything, it's like he's dancing and singing and performing. So he said, let me ask you something. When you with a woman and she don't know the way to your heart, is it bombing?
I feel a little uncomfortable.
Michael, well, ask me any question. I'll respond to Steve Harvey. Ready? So it's like the faces first.
Why don't we do Family Feud?
Okay. Well, I know it from more Q&A on the Steve Harvey show. The
Okay.
women who ask
He
him
has a-
questions
I
about
didn't know he has a
relationships.
show.
Steve TV.
Okay.
Yeah. So he's always like this. Ask a
right.
question.
Steve,
Yes.
my daughter dresses in all kinds of ways. Goes out
Okay.
wearing all sorts of things.
What? Wait, let me stop you there. What kind of ways? This here.
Ways that are inappropriate for a 13-year-old.
Okay. Okay.
And I'm trying to get her to stop, but she won't listen to me.
Let me tell you something. You said your daughter's 13?
I
13?
did.
Damn. The reason she's dressing that way is because she likes boys. And a boy who's 13 is more a problem than a girl who's 13.
I think what you need.
I was a 13-year-old boy. Let me tell you something. You better get on that because there's nothing more dangerous for a 13-year-old girl is a 13-year-old boy.
I think if we're gonna
so
kick
when
off,
a 13-year-old boy go to your house and he shows up at your house, you just make sure you open the door and you say, "What's cracking?"
I think if we're getting kicked off, it might be for the Steve Harvey impression.
Really?
I think you also need to shave everything but your mustache.
This here. Well, we'll see how it develops.
Maybe you got to do it standing up. That might be part of it.
I can't. We're in a weird position.
I'm sorry. I didn't.
Well, let's just sit with that uncomfortable bomb. A bomb for an audience of one and many.
Up, episode
Yeah.
15.
What if that clip goes viral and we clip it? Huh? You'll feel shitty.
Are you sure?
Anyway,
That'd be good for me.
That was highly uncomfortable.
I'm sorry, everybody.
Thanks for watching, everyone.
Thanks for watching.
I appreciate it. We'll be right back. That's Buckle Up, episode 13. Stay tuned. That was controversial, offensive, and amazing. I had a great time.
Yeah, if you don't like this one, skip.
man.
Just listen to 12.
We'll be right back with more Buckle Up
Buckle up,
podcast,
baby.
episode 13.